It was a Monday. Rain on the windshield. A silence between us that had calcified over years. We drove to the law office together, Karen and I, but we might as well have been in separate vehicles. She scrolled her phone. I kept both hands on the wheel. We were finalizing the transition of my small business. A company I built with torn-up hands and lost weekends, and on paper, I was gifting a percentage to Zach and my biological son. A gesture of legacy. A mark of permanence. That's how I saw it. Zach had turned 17 3 months earlier. Long legs, sharp jaw, smart mouth. The kind of boy who could charm strangers and cut you in half with the same sentence. He'd grown up with two men orbiting him. One who visited with gifts and stories, the other who paid for the roof over his head and took him to the ER when he broke his wrist. I was the latter, the one who stayed, the one who mattered when it wasn't fun anymore. But the truth is, he never saw me. Not really. We sat in a law office in downtown Austin. Glass walls, brushed metal. A firm with more ambition than warmth. The lawyer, Harris, was an old colleague. He looked at me differently now. Less like a friend, more like a client waiting to lose his shirt. He laid out the documents. Equity transfers, revised trust funds, next of kin sign-offs. My name sat at the top of every page, but my authority had already been erased. I was reviewing the clause about succession rights when Zach leaned back, arms folded behind his head. His sneakers were dirty. His voice was clean. He's just temporary. He doesn't decide anything. He didn't whisper it, didn't hesitate, just said it like it was fact, like he was naming a street or reciting a birth date. The air changed. The assistant stopped typing. Karen didn't look up. She didn't flinch. That was the part that burned. Not the boy's arrogance, but the woman's silence. The lawyer looked to me, eyes unreadable. I studied Zach for a beat too long. He didn't blink, didn't backtrack, just smiled. I closed the folder. My fingers were steady. "We're not signing anything today," I said, sliding the papers back across the table. No one stopped me when I stood. No one called after me, not even Karen. By the time I reached the street, my phone started buzzing. Karen's sister, then her mother, then Karen herself. "What happened? Why did you leave? Why did you walk out?" I didn't respond. I got in my truck, started the engine, then turned it off again. The rain was still coming down, soft, constant, like it wasn't interested in making a scene. I sat there for over an hour. No music, no movement, just thoughts. And they came hard. Memories I hadn't asked for, clues I had ignored. Like how 2 years ago, Karen planned a trip to Colorado without ever asking if I could take time off. I only found out because Zach left the itinerary on the counter. Or the time they changed my younger son's school, moved him from a charter to a private, and I found out the day of the orientation, like some distant relative being looped in out of courtesy. The birthday party where I paid for the catering, the cake, the rented tent, and no one thought to include my name on the invitations. It said hosted by Karen and family. Family, not husband, not father, just a faceless, silent partner in the background. I had been edited out of my own life, cut cleanly, without painkillers, but I kept showing up. I paid the bills. I drove Zach to college tours even when he wore headphones the entire trip. I fixed the water heater. I cleaned out the gutters. I filled every silence with service, thinking one day they'd see it. And maybe that's the most pathetic part, the hope, because deep down I was still waiting to be accepted. Waiting for that one conversation where Zach would call me Dad without sarcasm. Where Karen would say, "We wouldn't be here without you." Instead, I got that sentence, sharp and surgical. "He's just temporary." He said it in a law office, but he might as well have said it at my funeral, because that was the moment I understood. I had spent years building a house where I was never meant to live, a life I was financing, not sharing. I thought I was one of them. They thought I was just passing through. That night, I didn't go inside the house. I stayed in the car. The rain had stopped, but I didn't notice. I just stared through the windshield at the front door, the one I had painted myself, the wreath Karen chose, the porch light Zach never replaced when it burned out. Inside that house was a family, a mother, 2 sons, and a man who paid for it all. But that man wasn't me, not anymore. I thought about the time Karen's ex came by to drop off a late birthday gift. Zach opened the door, hugged him like he was a war hero. They laughed. They caught up. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed, smiling. I was upstairs fixing a leaking pipe. No one called me down. No one said, "Hey, Michael's here too. He helped raise this boy when you couldn't." That's when it started. Not the exclusion that had always been there, but my awareness of it. I had ignored it, told myself it was just a phase, just growing pains. But the truth is, I had never been inside that circle. I was orbiting it, financing it, apologizing for asking to be seen. And Zach's words were the confirmation I had needed. Not wanted, needed. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was the family creed. I was the outsider, the investor, the one they thanked behind closed doors and discredited in public. I looked at the messages again. "We need to talk. Please come back." Zach didn't mean it. Don't overreact. But this wasn't overreaction. It was clarity. That single sentence had done more than any argument could. It had peeled back the skin of the family we pretended to be and showed me the bones underneath. And they were hollow. I finally stepped out of the truck close to midnight. The porch light flickered. Another bulb burned out. I opened the door and stepped into silence. Karen was asleep on the couch, her phone still in her hand. Zach's shoes were kicked under the coffee table. A slice of pizza on a paper plate, untouched. A movie on pause. The house was quiet, but the silence wasn't peace. It was absence. Absence of trust. Absence of love. Absence of the man I had tried to be. I didn't wake Karen. I didn't say a word. I walked past her, down the hallway, and into my office. I turned on the light, sat down at the desk, opened the locked drawer. Inside was a folder, labeled in bold black marker, Future. Inside that folder was everything: insurance policies, business shares, the lease to the second location I was planning to open, Zach's college trust, the deed to the house with my name and mine alone at the top. And suddenly it felt like a stranger's life. A man who thought he mattered. I stared at those pages and whispered the sentence to myself. The one Zach had gifted me. He's just temporary. And I knew then, if that's how they saw me, I would show them what temporary really looked like. The next morning, the sun rose like it always did, golden light through the blinds, shadows on the hardwood. But something was different. Not in the world. In me. Some wire had snapped during the night, clean and final. I had spent years swallowing things whole. Disrespect, silence, exclusion. And now I was starving for consequence. I made coffee. Black, bitter. No cream this time. Karen passed me in the kitchen, her robe half open, eyes still fogged from sleep. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The night before still lingered in the air, like smoke after the fires already burned through. I went back to my office, sat at the same desk, same folder. This time I opened it without hesitation. There they were, contracts, bank documents, letters of guarantee. Every single thread of financial control we'd quietly built over the past 10 years. I flipped past the cover page, past the shop lease for the new location I was about to sign. I found the trust agreement. Zach's name, typed clean in bold, just above the account numbers. I stared at it like it was someone else's child. Then I made the first call. "Pause the trust," I said. "Indefinitely. No new deposits, no disbursements. Lock the account. I'll sign whatever you need." The banker was confused, polite, hesitant. "Are you sure, Mr. Harris?" I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. Next came the accountant. I gave him 2 words. Freeze everything. I told him I wanted a review of all shared accounts, including the one Karen used for groceries and monthly bills. Any card that didn't require my explicit approval was to be shut down. Immediately. No exceptions. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I didn't leave room for questions. I just gave orders. And they listened. By lunchtime, half the family's financial arteries had been clamped shut. I didn't do it out of rage. I did it out of clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to protect anyone from the truth. Not Zach. Not Karen. Not even myself. The truth was simple. If I didn't have a voice in this family, then I wouldn't have a wallet in it either. At 12:43 p.m. Karen called me. I didn't pick up. She called again. Then texted, "Can we talk?" I let it sit. I finished my sandwich. Checked the mail. Deleted the junk. At 1:15 I called her back. She answered on the first ring, voice soft. Too soft. Zach didn't mean what he said. Silence. He was upset. He didn't understand the context. More silence. She went on, her voice trying to sound warm, like nothing had changed. "You know how teenagers are. He said it wrong. He didn't mean temporary like that." I let her speak. Let her build her little tower of excuses. Then I knocked it over. "If I don't get a say, I don't make the payments," I said. Calm. Measured. I wanted the words to land like bricks. She hesitated. I could hear her blinking through the phone. "I just think. Let the real decision-makers handle it," I said. She was quiet. Then she hung up. A text came through 2 minutes later. "We need to talk tonight." I didn't answer. That evening, the house was strangely quiet. Zach wasn't home. Karen cooked, something with garlic, but the smell didn't reach me. I stayed in the garage, reorganizing tools I didn't need. I heard her walking back and forth inside, waiting, pretending not to be. Around 9 p.m., she knocked on the door. "Michael," she said, voice neutral. "Can we just talk?" I opened the door, looked at her. Still in the same robe, now tied tighter. Hair pinned up like she was trying to rewind the day. I didn't invite her in. I didn't move. She folded her arms. "This is going too far." "No," I said. "It hasn't gone far enough." She blinked. That rattled her. She wasn't used to hearing that tone from me. I was the quiet one, the patient one, the stepfather who swallowed every insult like communion. "I've always supported you," she said. "No," I corrected. "You've always tolerated me. There's a difference." She looked like she wanted to argue, but the words never came, because she knew. Somewhere deep inside, she knew I was right. I closed the garage door. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. Because the bed I'd shared with her for 10 years felt like a stranger's mattress now. A place where respect used to sleep and never woke up. The next day, my attorney called. "I saw the documents," he said. "You walked out for a reason." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He paused, then continued, "Look, I've seen a lot of families in freefall, but this one's clear. You don't owe them a future they don't respect." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm suggesting we restructure the trust," he said. "Remove Zach's share. Redirect the funds into a custodial account for your biological son only. You'll still control it. No one else moves a cent without your signature." It was brutal, cold, legal. I said yes, with one added clause. All decisions require my personal approval, in writing. No verbal agreements. No cosigners. No assumptions. He agreed. By the time we hung up, Zach had been erased from every future plan I'd ever made. The fallout came in waves. First, Karen. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. "This is punishment." "No," I said. "It's math. Respect equals access." He failed. Then Zach. A voice message. Muted. Guilt-drenched. Forced. "I didn't mean it like that. I was just mad. I didn't think you'd take it that seriously." That's when I realized something that made my blood go cold. He wasn't sorry he said it. He was sorry it cost him something. I replied with one sentence. "You said what you all have been thinking." I just finally heard it out loud. Then I shut off his gas card, called the insurance company and removed him from the family plan. The car registration stayed in my name, so I froze it. Karen texted me again, "You're being vindictive. He's just a kid." I didn't answer, because just a kid becomes a man real fast when money disappears. By the weekend, the silence had evolved into performance. Karen made dinner for just her and my younger son. She set the table for two, left mine empty. I ate in the office. I overheard her talking to Zach in the hallway. Words like immature, dramatic, and he'll calm down. He didn't calm down. He got quieter. Because that's what happens when you lose your leverage. You either learn humility or you lose even more. I still paid for what mattered. My biological son's tuition? Paid ahead of schedule. His trust fund? Doubled. Insurance? Full coverage. Anything that carried my name stayed covered. But anything shared? Anything that required me to pretend? That I didn't announce it. I didn't leave notes or slam doors. I just removed myself. Quietly. Like a man who finally accepts the truth he's been choking on. They said I was temporary. Fine. Then let them see what permanent absence feels like. The storm didn't come all at once. It crept in quiet, rehearsed, fake. Like everything else they'd built around me. By Wednesday, Karen was soft again. Making coffee the way I liked it. Asking questions she hadn't cared about in years. Zach started to leave dishes in the sink again. Like that absence of fear was some kind of olive branch. The house felt rehearsed. Like they were waiting for me to reset. But I didn't. Because something in me had died the day Zach said, temporary. And you can't unkill a part of a man. Not once it's rotted that deep. That morning, my lawyer called again. Same measured tone. Same unhurried cadence of a man who's watched 1,000 families unravel over money and blood. I've gone over everything, he said. And I'll be honest, you've been too generous. He wasn't wrong. He listed the trust changes. The updated account protections. The clause about Zach's exclusion. Then he paused. Want my advice? I said nothing. Don't walk this back. I've seen this exact scenario before. Stepfather carries the load. Real dad's a ghost. Wife plays both sides. Kid cashes in until the well dries. Then suddenly everyone remembers who actually paid for the lights. I still said nothing. He chuckled. And just for the record, you were never temporary. You were the foundation. They just thought foundations don't crack. I hung up. Not because I was angry. Because I needed the quiet more than I needed the validation. But it stuck with me. They thought foundations don't crack. They thought I would never walk. They were wrong. That night, Zach sent another voice message. 47 seconds. Rambling. Hesitation woven through every sentence. I didn't mean it like that, okay? I was pissed. Everyone was pushing stuff on me and I snapped. It wasn't about you. I know you've done things. A lot of things. But you're not my real dad, so sometimes it's hard to know where the line is. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. The way it sounded. As if tone was the issue. As if the word temporary might have been fine if whispered instead of spoken. I didn't respond. I deleted the message. I knew what this was. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation. He wasn't sorry for what he believed. He was sorry I had stopped believing in him. The next day, Karen cornered me in the living room. No apron. No soft voice. Just that practice stare. The one she used when bills were late or her ex missed another court-ordered payment. He's 17, she said. I know. He said something stupid. I know. You can't just destroy his life over one sentence. That one made me pause. I turned and looked at her. Really looked. Destroy his life? I asked. She nodded, arms crossed. I leaned in, voice even. No, I didn't destroy anything. I built that life. I paid for the bricks. I poured the foundation. I held it up when his father ghosted for the 3rd Christmas in a row. So don't you dare come to me now and talk about destruction. She looked like she wanted to say something, scream, maybe, but the words stalled. Because she knew. She knew. And the silence between us said more than any apology could. I stopped paying for Zach's school. Not with drama. Just with precision. The tuition account was in my name. The payments routed through my business ledger. The moment I froze them, the system flagged his enrollment. 3 days later, the university emailed him. Standard language. Polite urgency. We regret to inform you that unless the outstanding balance is resolved, your enrollment will be suspended. He didn't tell me. I wasn't supposed to know. but I had access to the inbox tied to the billing portal. I saw the panic unfold in real time. First, he tried to reroute the payment through his mother's card. Declined. Then he emailed the financial aid office. Said there must have been a mistake. There wasn't. Then he went silent. Because for the first time in his life, silence had consequence. Karen approached again 2 days later. This time, she didn't lead with anger. She led with performance. He's not eating. He's barely sleeping. He's lost. I said nothing. She stood in the doorway, arms limp, face soft. Michael, please, don't do this. I looked at her. I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm undoing what I never should have done. She flinched at that, like I'd hit her, but I hadn't. I'd just spoken the one sentence that had been lodged in my chest for years. I never should have paid for loyalty I hadn't earned. The next day, a different text came. From Zach's phone. But not from Zach. It was Karen. He wants to talk to you in person. Please. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, no need. He already said what mattered. By Friday, the calls stopped. The house went still. Not peaceful. Just paused. Like everyone was waiting for a decision that wasn't coming. Zach didn't speak to me. He floated through the halls like a tenant on his last week of lease. Karen stopped making dinner altogether. My younger son, too young to understand the politics, stayed in his room, drawing, playing games, smiling when I passed him in the hall. I kept feeding him, teaching him, funding him, because he hadn't drawn a line in the sand yet, because he still looked at me like I mattered. Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. Not once. Not a neighbor's knock. 3 sharp chimes. Zach opened the door. His father stood on the porch. Todd, the ghost. He was early 40s, still pretending to be 30. Button-down shirt 1 size too tight. Car keys dangling from his fingers like a trophy. That plastic smile, the one that never reached his eyes. Karen stood behind Zach. Frozen. Not surprised. Just stuck. I watched from the top of the stairs. Todd looked up at me. Didn't blink. I heard there's a financial issue, he said. I didn't answer. He stepped inside. Uninvited. Zach looked between us. He said he's not paying for school anymore. Todd nodded. That true? I nodded. Karen opened her mouth. I stopped her with a look. This wasn't her moment. This was mine. Todd walked toward me. Fake calm. I'll cover what I can. He wouldn't. I knew his credit score better than he did. I covered every unpaid medical bill. Every forgotten field trip. Every emergency dental procedure. Every time he'd meant to send the check. I studied him. Good, I said. Then there's no problem. He smirked. You don't think this is petty? I laughed. Once. Cold. No, I said. Petty is abandoning your son for years and showing up when the bills come due. This is called correction. He didn't reply. Zach stood there, looking not at him, not at me, but at the space between us. I spoke loud enough for the house to hear. I'm not paying for someone who calls me temporary. I'm not funding a life I've been disinvited from. If he wants school, he can ask his real dad. Todd turned to Zach. You never called him temporary, did you? Zach said nothing. Karen closed her eyes. And the truth hung there, louder than shouting, heavier than guilt. That night, no one spoke at dinner. No one prayed. No one thanked me. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't a placeholder. I was a boundary. And they were learning what boundaries cost. The shift came quietly. Not in words. Not in apologies. But in tone. I heard it in Karen's voice when she asked if I'd be home for dinner. Not the old assumption, the taken-for-granted tone that dripped off her for years, but something cautious, careful, as if my presence were no longer guaranteed, as if I had become the stranger in a house I paid for. Zach stopped slamming doors. He didn't walk through the hall like he owned it anymore. He moved softer, as if the floors had become fragile beneath him. And they had, because the foundation holding them up had been mine all along. I became a shadow they couldn't predict, a silence they couldn't manipulate. That's when the meetings started. Karen asked for the first one a week after Todd's surprise appearance. She tried to frame it as neutral. A discussion, she called it, just to clear the air. I told her she could schedule it with my lawyer. I'd be happy to attend under legal advisement. She didn't expect that, but she agreed, because she was starting to understand the new rules. We met at the same law office where it all began. Same leather chairs. Same cold water bottles no one opened. Same assistant, typing everything like she was recording a slow-motion implosion. Karen was there. Zach sat beside her, hands clenched, eyes fixed on the table. Todd didn't show. Of course he didn't. He'd already done his job, reminded them what real absence looked like. My lawyer arrived, sat beside me, nodded once. Harris, the estate lawyer, opened his folder. "Well," he began, "we're here to discuss the future of the trust and the proposed amendments." "I'm not reversing anything," I said. Karen turned to me. "Michael, please. Just listen." I looked at Harris. "Is this a negotiation or a plea?" Silence. He cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harris and Zach would like to propose a middle ground. Perhaps reinstating some of the funding." "No." Karen leaned in, voice low. "He's just a boy. He made a mistake." "So did I said. Zach looked up then. His voice was smaller than I remembered. "I didn't mean it." I studied him. There was no fight in his eyes. No arrogance. Just calculation diluted by fear. Like someone who'd lost a bet he thought was rigged in his favor. "You meant it," I replied. "You just didn't think I'd hear it." He looked away. Karen exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a week. "Michael, this can't go on forever." I shrugged. "Then stop it. I'm not holding anything hostage. I just stopped paying ransom for a seat at a table I was never welcome to." Even Harris blinked at that. I stood. So did my attorney. "This meeting's over," I said. "There's no confusion. You can have me in the family. Or you can have me on the margins. But you don't get both. I'm not the background music to someone else's authority." And I left. The next move was Karen's. That night she cooked dinner. The full spread. Roast chicken, potatoes, that dry green bean dish no one actually liked, but she always made to keep up appearances. She poured me wine. Set the table for 4. No one touched their forks. I waited. She broke first. "I didn't protect you." I didn't reply. Zach looked up from his plate. I was wrong. Still, I said nothing. Because I wasn't waiting for apologies anymore. I was waiting for action. And words, especially theirs, had no currency in this house anymore. Only behavior did. Over the next week, the landscape changed. Zach started asking permission. Small things. The car. The Wi-Fi password. A ride to the campus office to plead his case for a late payment extension. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just looked at him. Because silence, it turns out, has a cost too. Karen started budgeting. I saw her scanning receipts at the kitchen table, running totals on her phone, searching for cracks in a life she hadn't realized was entirely subsidized by me. She stopped asking if I'd join them for dinner, because now she wasn't sure I would. And that doubt, that was the respect I'd been buying for years, now arriving through absence. A few days later, another request came. An email this time, from Zach. Subject line, "Formal request for reinstatement of education funds." It was a PDF. Typed. Formatted. Structured like a scholarship letter. "Dear Michael, I am writing to ask you to reconsider your decision to remove financial support for my education. I understand now that my words were hurtful, and I failed to recognize your role in my life. I'm not asking for forgiveness, only for a chance to finish what you already started." It was the most grown-up thing he'd ever written, but still a performance. Because when money leaves, even the ungrateful learn how to type with humility. I didn't reply. Karen stopped wearing her ring at night. I noticed. Of course I noticed. It was subtle, but real. She was bracing for something. Maybe she thought I was preparing to leave. Maybe she was. But I wasn't preparing anything. I was just existing without apology. I had nothing left to give to ghosts. A week later, I made the final move. I met with my bank. Set up a new account. One name on it, mine. Transferred my business funds. Set up a new college trust for my younger son only. New executor. New conditions. Then I updated the will. Zach's name was removed. Karen's inheritance was reduced. Conditional on continued cohabitation. The lawyer asked me 3 times if I was sure. I was, because love without loyalty is not love. It's fraud. That night I sat in the backyard, bourbon in hand, fire pit going. My younger son came outside, climbed into the chair beside me. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Are we still okay?" I looked at him. His eyes weren't calculating. They weren't begging. They were scared. "Yeah," I said. "You never made me choose." He nodded, looked into the fire. We didn't say much after that. But that moment, that was real. Because respect is quiet. Contempt is loud. And love? Love sits beside you without asking for proof. Zach dropped out of university the next semester. Couldn't pay the balance. Karen cried once, then went quiet. He picked up a part-time job. Borrowed Todd's car once a week. Started showing up to dinner early. Sometimes helped clean. But the damage was done. He didn't need discipline anymore. He needed distance. And I gave it to him. Now they want me back. They want more meetings. More conversations. Karen says, "We're trying. Can't you meet us halfway?" But I've walked all their miles. I paid every toll. Now I collect. Not in money. In presence. In control. In the quiet understanding that I was never temporary. I was the reason they had stability at all. My younger son got his first trust deposit last week. He doesn't know it yet. But one day he will. One day he'll open that letter, see his name, and understand. Someone believed in him enough to build a future before he ever asked. As for Zach, he got something too. A lesson. That being loud doesn't make you right. That calling someone temporary doesn't stop them from making permanent moves. So now I ask you, was I cruel? Was I petty? Or was I finally consistent in a house where I had been expected to be quiet and generous while being ignored? You tell me, if your name had been erased behind your back, would you still sign the check? If the family called you optional, would you still keep the lights on? Because me, I stopped paying for love I never received. And I never looked back.